I arrived at my uncle's house on a cloudy afternoon, just as the golden light of dusk peeked through the overcast sky. The familiar brick exterior hadn't changed, but the air around the home felt different, heavier, perhaps. His wife's death, sudden and cruel, had left a void that I could sense before I even rang the doorbell. The door creaked open, and there he stood. My Uncle Derek. His warm brown eyes, always so full of humor, now carried a shadow of grief. But when he saw me, they softened into something gentler, gratitude maybe. He smiled, small but genuine. "Emma," he said, as if the sound of my name itself was a relief. "I wasn't expecting you." I stepped inside, the familiar scent of wood polish and cinnamon still lingering in the air. I hugged him, my arms wrapping around his broad shoulders, feeling the subtle tremble in his frame. It had been weeks since the funeral, but grief clung to him like the lingering scent of rain after a storm. "I just wanted to check on you," I said, pulling back but still holding his gaze. "You shouldn't be alone." His lips quirked into a half-smile. "You're the first one who's thought that." The house was dim, curtains drawn to block out the light. I followed him into the kitchen, where the kettle whistled on the stove. He poured us tea, his hands moving mechanically, as if he didn't truly know what to do with them anymore. We sat across from each other, the small kitchen table feeling vast between us. "How are you holding up?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. He exhaled, the breath carrying the weight of sleepless nights and unanswered questions. "I'm managing," he said. "But it's quiet." I nodded. I couldn't imagine what it was like to lose someone you had built a life with. His eyes wandered to the window, where the rain had started to patter softly against the glass. Silence filled the room, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that two people who understood each other could share without feeling the need to fill it. After a while, he spoke again. "You've grown up so much, Em. I still remember you running around this house, chasing the dog and knocking over your aunt's plants." I laughed softly, remembering how she used to scold me, only for Uncle Derek to sneak me a cookie behind her back. Those were simpler times, when the world felt invincible. "I miss those days," I admitted, tracing the rim of my teacup. "Everything felt easy back then." He looked at me with a tenderness that caught me off guard. "Life has a way of changing, doesn't it?" I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "It does." We spent the rest of the evening talking about the past, sharing memories of my aunt that made us laugh and cry in equal measure. He seemed lighter as the night went on, like he was shedding layers of the grief that had weighed him down. By the time I was getting ready to leave, he looked at me with something close to peace. "Thank you for coming," he said as he walked me to the door. "I'll be back," I promised, and I meant it. The message from Uncle Derek came just as I was slipping under the covers, my phone screen glowing softly in the dark. His words were simple but warm. *, come over tomorrow afternoon. I'll cook something delicious for us, *. I smiled to myself, rereading it once, twice before replying. I'd love that. The thought of spending more time with him made my chest feel light, like maybe this was what he needed to breathe again, to find something outside the heavy silence of grief. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I didn't know why I was fussing so much over what to wear. It wasn't like this was a date, but I couldn't help myself. I wanted to be a comforting presence, someone who could remind him of life beyond his sorrow. I settled on a soft sweater, something cozy but flattering, paired with jeans and a spritz of my favorite perfume. Casual, but just enough to make an impression. When I arrived at his house, the smell of cooking wafted through the open windows, a mix of herbs and garlic that instantly made me feel at home. I knocked lightly, but the door swung open before my knuckles even left the wood. There he was, standing in the doorway, looking more put together than he had in weeks. His shirt was crisp, tucked neatly into dark jeans, and there was a hint of cologne that lingered in the air between us. It wasn't overpowering, just subtle enough to notice. I smiled. You clean up nicely. He chuckled, a soft laugh that warmed the space between us. I thought I'd try. I figured if you were going to take the time to come over, I should at least look like I have my life together. The house felt brighter than the day before. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting golden streaks on the hardwood floor. The curtains were open, and there was music playing faintly in the background, some soft jazz tune that made everything feel relaxed. I made your favorite, he said, leading me to the kitchen. Chicken parm with extra cheese, just the way you like it. You remembered? I asked, touched by the thoughtfulness. Of course I did. Some things you don't forget. As we settled into the kitchen, the conversation flowed effortlessly. It was like we had slipped into a rhythm that neither of us realized we'd been craving. We talked about everything. My job, his plans now that he was navigating life alone, and memories of my aunt that felt less painful today and more like a gentle nostalgia. When he leaned over to hand me a plate, the scent of his cologne grew stronger, mixing with the warmth of the kitchen. I inhaled it quietly, realizing how comforting it was. It wasn't just the cologne itself, it was what it symbolized. He was taking steps, small ones, but steps nonetheless, to find himself again. I haven't cooked like this in a while, he admitted as he poured us each a glass of wine. It feels good, though. You were right to come yesterday. I didn't know how much I needed it. I smiled at him over the rim of my glass, my fingers tracing its delicate edge. I'm glad I could help. After dinner, we moved to the living room, where the fire crackled gently, casting flickering shadows on the walls. We sat close on the couch, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him. I tucked my legs under me, leaning into the comfort of the moment. You've grown into such an amazing woman, Emma, he said, his voice soft and thoughtful. I always knew you'd be special, but seeing it now, it's different. His words caught me off guard, and my breath hitched slightly, though I tried to hide it. I guess we both grew up in ways we didn't expect. He smiled at that, a soft, wistful smile that tugged at my heart. The firelight danced across his face, highlighting the tired creases around his eyes. But there was something alive in his gaze, something that hadn't been there before. I didn't realize how late it had gotten until I noticed the clock ticking softly on the mantel. Time had slipped away from us, and neither of us seemed in a rush to reclaim it. You can stay if you want, he said, his voice low, as if the suggestion itself was fragile. You don't have to drive home in the dark. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to, but because the air between us felt heavier now, charged with something unspoken. Are you sure? He nodded, his gaze steady. I'd like the company. I found myself agreeing, though my heart raced in a way that had nothing to do with fear. The boundaries of what this evening had become felt blurred, undefined, but instead of feeling wrong, it felt like we were exactly where we were supposed to be. As the fire crackled softly, I leaned back against the cushions, listening to the steady hum of the house around us. His arm rested along the back of the couch, just inches from my shoulder. We didn't say much more after that, but the silence wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence you could get lost in, where words weren't necessary. I wasn't sure where this was heading or what tomorrow would bring, but in that moment, sitting beside him, everything felt okay. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't alone and neither was I. The room was bathed in the soft amber glow of the fire, shadows flickering on the walls, as if they were dancing to the unspoken rhythm between us. I had shifted slightly on the couch, my head resting lightly against the cushions, but my eyes never left him. There was something about the way he sat there, calm, reflective, that made it impossible to look away. Then, without warning, he stood and walked to a small shelf tucked against the corner of the room. My eyes followed him as he picked up a leather-bound book, its worn cover a testament to years of use. He thumbed through its fragile pages as if searching for something specific. When he found it, his lips curved into a small smile, like he had just uncovered a hidden treasure. "What is that?" I asked, intrigued. He glanced at me, a glimmer of something playful in his gaze. It's a collection of poems, he said, sitting back down beside me. This one. I think you'll like it. I couldn't help but smile at how tender his tone had become. Soft and inviting. You read poetry? I teased gently, not knowing this side of him. There's a lot you don't know about me, he replied, the warmth in his voice wrapping around me like a blanket. He cleared his throat softly, as though shaking off the initial awkwardness, and then began to read. His voice was steady, slow, and rich, each word carrying a weight that made my heart beat just a little faster. Love is not always bold and grand. Sometimes it's found in quiet hands, in the glance that lingers, soft and still, in the comfort of a touch that heals. I didn't move. I didn't blink. Each word sank deeper into me, as if he wasn't just reading them aloud but breathing them into the space between us. The way he spoke, the way his voice caressed each line, it was as though he had chosen this poem specifically for me. It's the warmth you feel on winter's night, when shadows stretch beneath soft light. A love that knows you when you hide, that stays when storms rage wild inside. The room around us seemed to blur, leaving only his voice and the steady hum of my heartbeat. I was amazed by how effortlessly he slipped into this romantic side of himself, as if it had been waiting quietly just beneath the surface. I'd known him my whole life, but this moment, this version of him was new. When he finished, he closed the book gently, placing it on the coffee table between us. His eyes met mine, and I realized I was holding my breath. I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the poem still lingering between us. I struggled to find the right word. Beautiful. You always knew I had a sentimental side, he said with a small chuckle. But there was something more behind his smile, a vulnerability that made him seem so human, so real. He wasn't just my uncle grieving the loss of his wife anymore. In that moment, he was a man rediscovering the pieces of himself that love had left behind. I leaned forward slightly, my hand instinctively reaching for his. His fingers, warm and steady, closed around mine. The contact was electric, yet comforting. We sat like that for a moment, his thumb gently brushing over my knuckles, as if testing the waters of a connection neither of us had expected to find. You're full of surprises, I whispered, my voice barely audible over the crackling fire. I think we both are, he murmured back, his gaze soft but searching, as though he was trying to decipher the same whirlwind of emotions that I was. The space between us felt smaller, the air charged with something I wasn't sure how to name. I didn't know if it was the poem, the warmth of the fire, or the way his hand fit perfectly around mine, but the walls I had unknowingly built began to crumble. And he seemed to feel it too, because his gaze dipped, lingering on my lips for a brief moment before meeting my eyes again. I'm glad you came today, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I haven't felt like this alive, I guess, in a long time. I squeezed his hand, my heart racing but steady enough to anchor me. You deserve to feel that again. His hand slipped from mine, but only so he could reach up and tuck a stray strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was simple, but it sent a shiver down my spine. His fingers lingered near my temple, as if he wasn't ready to let go. And in that quiet moment, with the fire crackling beside us and the echoes of his poems still dancing through the air, I realized that this connection wasn't something either of us had planned. It had just grown quietly between us, waiting for the right time to reveal itself. We weren't just two people comforting each other. We were two souls finding warmth in the spaces where loss had left us cold. Neither of us spoke again that night, but we didn't need to. His presence was enough, and for the first time in what felt like forever, neither of us felt alone. His arms wrapped around me slowly, as if giving me the chance to pull away, but I didn't. I leaned into him instead, letting the warmth of his embrace anchor me. His hand rested gently on my back, fingers tracing small circles through the fabric of my sweater. For the first time in weeks, maybe even years, I felt safe. Truly safe. Like nothing outside this moment could touch me. I don't know how long we stood there, the world outside forgotten, his chest rising and falling in sync with mine. I could feel his breath against my hair, steady and comforting. When I tilted my head up slightly to meet his gaze, something shifted. The air between us thickened, and his eyes searched mine, lingering, hesitant, as if asking for permission without saying a word. And then, softly, gently, his lips met mine. The kiss wasn't rushed or desperate. It was slow, deliberate, a careful exploration of something we had both tried to ignore but could no longer deny. His lips were warm, tasting faintly of the wine we had shared, and for a moment, the rest of the world disappeared. I lost myself in the way his hand cupped the back of my neck, the way his thumb brushed against my skin as if to reassure me that this wasn't a mistake. But as quickly as it had begun, he pulled back, his forehead resting lightly against mine. His breath was ragged, as though he, too, was struggling to process what had just happened. "Emma," his voice was a whisper, heavy with emotion. "I don't want to ruin anything." "You're not," I said softly, my fingers still resting on his chest. "You're not ruining anything." He looked at me for a moment longer, and I could see the internal battle in his eyes, the push and pull between what he wanted and what he thought was right. Finally, he exhaled a shaky breath and kissed my forehead, a lingering gesture that felt like both an apology and a promise. "I should go," he said, his voice strained. I nodded, though my heart protested. "Good night." "Good night," he murmured, his hand slipping from mine as he stepped away. He hesitated in the doorway, as if part of him didn't want to leave, but then he gave me a small, almost reluctant smile and disappeared down the hall. A moment later, I heard the soft click of the front door closing behind him. I stood there, frozen, my lips still tingling from the warmth of his kiss. The silence of the house felt deafening now, the absence of him creating a hollow ache I hadn't anticipated. When I finally made my way upstairs, the clock on my nightstand read just past midnight, but sleep wasn't an option. I lay in bed, the events of the evening playing on a loop in my mind. His voice, his touch, the way his eyes softened when he looked at me. It was all too much, and yet it wasn't enough. I tossed and turned, the scent of his cologne still clinging faintly to my sweater. I replayed every moment of that kiss, analyzing it, reliving it, wondering what it meant and where it would lead. My mind raced with possibilities. Were we crossing a line we couldn't uncross? Or was this something we had both needed, a connection neither of us had expected but couldn't ignore? The questions swirled in my mind, leaving me wide awake as the hours passed. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, heard the way he whispered my name, felt the warmth of his lips on mine. By the time dawn began to creep through the curtains, I hadn't slept a single minute. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but one thing was clear: after tonight, nothing between us would ever be the same.